Hello and welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Bill Hirschman, founder of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com, and I'll be your host today. Today we're going to go to the Theater Lab. You'll find out what that means soon enough. Let's meet our panel for the day first. Sherry Upton is a producer and director and has literally been in show business all her life. Michelle Solomon is the editor for MiamiArtZine.com, as well as a theater and movie critic and works for Florida Theater on Stage. Jeffrey Bruce is an actor and a director here in South Florida. But today our guest is Matt Stabile, who is the artistic director for the Theater Lab, which is the professional resident company at Florida Atlantic University. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Now, we have so many questions for you, more than a half hour's worth. But before we get into all that, let's take a look at this video clip of some of the work.
Well, I think that the idea for Theater Lab at FAU was fairly simple. FAU should have its own professional resident theater company.
We're going into our fourth season, our third of full productions. We are focused on new work. As audience members, they get to come in and experience what professional theater is like and the quality of the work that we're doing. They have the advantage of seeing work that isn't being done anywhere else in the country.
Theater as an art form is not just about the great work in our canon, but it's about the first time a play is done and being a part of that experience and knowing that for generations to come, that new work will take its place as possibly the classics of the future.
When you're doing new work, your audience is never going to recognize the titles. And most of the time, they're not going to recognize the playwrights. But when you're dedicated to new work, your audience has to trust you.
With any theater that's dedicated to new work, playwrights at the center of that equation. So over the years, our major artistic relationships begin with the playwright being here in residence.
My favorite thing about creating art is taking that beginning play, something that's just been written, and bringing it to life, putting my stamp on that character, creating that person that the playwright may not even know they wrote.
We like to talk about how we're trying to pull the curtain back on some of the process and get the public involved in the idea that, like, going to the show once the show is up and running and produced is not the only step in the process. It can be just as interesting and dynamic to be there when the play is first being read, is first being presented to an audience. People forget this about theater. I think that, it is not just going and watching a play. It is showing up at half hour before curtain and milling about in the lobby and having a discussion. Because here at Theater Lab especially, we try and tailor our entire experience to that evening for you. So when you come in, the art that is in the art gallery has been selected to go along in some way with the show you're going to see. I love our space and I love what it gives us, and I love really what it gives our audience. I love that somebody sitting in the fourth row, essentially our last row, can see the moment that someone's face, an actor's face, changes ever so slightly on stage. I love that our space is intimate enough that you almost get those film close-ups that you don't get in a bigger house.
Having Theater Lab on the campus of FAU is a gem. And I don't know if everybody's even aware of that. I mean, I want to shout it from the rooftops to the public to come and see. Here's this great theater doing new work by professionals. It's extraordinary.
We want to be a place where the plays that everyone in the country is talking about, we want to be a place where those plays begin. More than anything, I want this to be an exciting, dynamic place to be. That when an audience member or an artist comes to work here, they feel energized and they bring that energy with them to whatever project they're working on next. That people are saying to themselves, I can't wait to see what's going on next at Theater Lab. That's what I want.
Wow, that was terrific.
Bravo. Thanks.
And watching all those clips, I kept thinking, oh, I remember that show.
Yeah.
I remember that show. We'll get back into the introductory stuff, but
Sure.
I think it's really crucial. the emphasis that you people put on new plays, either developing a play from scratch or giving it a second or a third production. Talk about what that development process is like, because very few people, even if they come see it, understand how much time you spend on it, what the actual process is.
Yeah, I think that's core to what we do, and so much so that, I mean, we're doing now a 3-play main stage season and 4 full productions if you count our Heckscher Theater for Families, right? So over the course of the year, 4 full productions. Now, a lot of bigger theaters are doing 8 shows, right? But the other half of our season is completely dedicated to R&D, right? Research and development, readings and development. And so we have playwrights forums where playwrights can just come down and work on whatever they want to work on. We have the New Play Festival. So we invest a lot of time in just, once we decide, hey, we want to work on this script or we want to work on this playwright, we set up some sort of reading session where we'll spend up to a week in rehearsals with actors and a playwright, just kind of refining the piece, helping them to find what it is they want to say or what it is they're trying to do. And then, you know, that can be its own reward. You know, a lot of the stuff that I think we're most proud of at Theatre Lab, we actually haven't produced. We've done the work of like helping to craft it and giving that playwright or those actors or whoever it is that safe space to come and work in, and then they take that on somewhere else and it goes to another theater somewhere else in the country and becomes its first full production. You know, and I think that's for us just as rewarding as having, you know, a hit show running.
And people are being paid all through this. This is
course.
not a volunteer situation.
Right. So when we do and we also involve our audience with that. So there are a lot of models around the country where theaters will do development work and it's more private and it's just for the artists involved or whatever. We try to engage the audience with that as well. Of our 10 full productions, 7 of them came out of our reading series. So we get the response from the audience. We get to know what they're interested in, what piques them, you know, and we have, you know, for next season, we have 2 of our full productions for next season came out of our readings, and I think people are really excited to see that full production. And we've done that every single year, you know.
And so that process takes months. I mean, this isn't something where you're working on it 2.5 weeks of rehearsal and maybe another extra week working with a playwright.
Right. No, we'll do generally with our development stuff, it's about a week. They'll come to town, they'll be working with us. We might be working with them for months prior to that, before they come to town. Tammy Ryan's a good example of that. She and I talk a lot about 2 of her plays that she's still working on. And then they'll come to town, we'll do a week of development and stuff, and then if we decide to produce it, then there's another whole process that goes into that.
So what is the process in finding the works? I mean, I've seen so many different playwrights, different people coming from different places.
Yeah.
I always wondered I know, you know, some of the actors are local. Are all the actors local?
For the most part, we had a couple of out of town. Well, so yes, for the most part, everybody has either come from here and is maybe based in New York now and like kind of is returning. But yeah, for the most part, all of our people are local.
And then finding the plays, and how does that work?
Man, Lou and I read a lot of plays, and a lot. You know, we have because we have such a small staff. We're a pretty small operation for what we do. We don't have a literary manager. We don't have the staff to go through plays, so it kind of falls on us. So we have a closed submission policy. So we will, once a playwright has worked with us, they become kind of family, and they have kind of open invitation to send us anything that they're interested in working on. And then a lot of times it's recommendations, other artistic directors or other festivals that we've attended, or playwrights recommending playwrights. That's how we find a lot of the work we produce.
2-part question. Does FAU have a playwriting course with students, and do they submit as well? Or is that under a separate kind of student performance type thing while they're progressing?
They do have a playwriting course. Our goal at Theatre Lab is to become a playwriting center, a national playwriting center. And so we're, as we grow, we're looking to grow along with them so that we can kind of make both of those things happen at the same time. There's not necessarily a playwriting major, and so we have had student submissions for our New Play Festival for our short works event, and we've actually had students get their short plays accepted into our, and performed as a reading as part of our New Play
And
Festival.
the other part of the question is, being under the aegis of FAU, being there right here, have they gotten more involved than you would like them to? In other words, I'm thinking of politics, and I'm thinking of another theater that had to
much are they
close when the
involved?
city got involved.
Yeah.
How involved are they? Are you autonomous, essentially?
Yeah, we are part of the Department of Theater and Dance. We secure the majority of our own funding. So the university gives us a lot of in-kind donations in terms of space, in terms of assistance with development and things like that. But the majority of our funding comes from donors that we have secured, and we're underwritten in that way. And in terms of, I mean, they're just incredibly supportive, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think everybody is scared of that. You know, people ask that question a lot, like, do they come down on you? Do they not let you do things? And I think they know what we're there to do, and they trust us now. They trust what we've been able to accomplish in the last, it'll be our 5th year next year. And so we will check in with them from time to time if we find something like when we were getting ready to commit to Harlow, and we knew that there was some, you know, material in that. So we just checked in, is this okay? And they were like, yeah, you don't even need to check. So no, so I think that they, at the beginning it was like, what is this? You want to do a live theater? Okay. And the people in the School of the Arts knew right away, like, yeah, this is going to be great. You know, and the university had to kind of be like, how is this going to work, right? And now I think after we've been there and the success that we've had, I think they're just totally on board and excited for what we're doing.
Matt, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay.
I mean, congratulations on
Thank you.
your presence and your charisma.
Thank
You
you.
are the face of Theatre Lab. But I think we'd like to know a little bit about you. How did you get to here?
I grew up in South Florida. I'm a Miami native, which I know, as we were talking about, that's rare, right? I went to performing arts middle school and high school. I went to New World School of the Arts, and then I left and went to college at SMU in Dallas. Left there and just thought I was going to go open a theater company in Philadelphia with 3 friends. Turns out you need money. And I stayed in Philly for a few years, then came back home. I was kind of sick of the cold. And I started working at Fantasy Theater Factory, which is down in South Miami. And Ed Allen and Mimi Schultz, who were just godsends to me at that time. And that was kind of when I got full-time in theater. And then that opened up an avenue to, I was doing a lot of educational outreach workshops with their company. And
As an actor? Or?
As an actor. And my mom's a teacher and had always been like, you should be a teacher. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make money. I'm gonna be an actor. And so, yeah, so I was doing that, and then an opportunity presented itself to join the acting faculty at a high school for the arts up in West Palm called G-Star. And I went and did that. I did that for 7 years, and
Wow.
it made me a better artist and a better person, and I really enjoyed my time there. And then I guess about 6 or 7 years ago, my wife, the fabulous Nikki Fried, she
Fabulous.
yes, she sat up one day and said, you know, I think I'd like to go back into being a full-time artist. And I said, all right, let's do it. And we've just been incredibly fortunate. Things have just kind of gone our way, and we've been able to make a career out of it now, and we're
Yeah,
really
fortunate
happy.
and smart.
Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things that I'm curious about, Lauren Gunderson, the playwright,
Yeah.
has said about one of her plays in particular that was at Arts Garage earlier, that it takes 2 or 3 full productions
Yeah.
before the playwright these days in the current development paradigm is comfortable that they've got the play that they meant
Yeah.
to produce.
Yeah.
What is the challenge in your case where you're working with a play as far as your audience's expectations, teaching your audience that what they're seeing is in fact a work that's still in development? How do you educate them to that?
It's tricky, you know, Lou, we talk about this a lot, like the hit flop mentality, and that new work, being dedicated to new work is kind of diametrically opposed to that mentality. And I think it starts by kind of what I was talking about in the video there, where we talk with our staff a lot, like, we're not in the theater business, we're in the hospitality industry. And I think that that's true. You know, theater is an active community, and it's about a place where people can gather. And if all you're focused on is the show you're putting on, you're missing half of the business, right? And so what we've tried to do, and I think we've done a good job, is be a place that is welcoming for artists, that is welcoming for audience members, that is welcoming for all members of the community. So we make that promise to them. Whatever you see here, you may not love the play, but we're gonna give it the highest quality production that we can give it, and we're gonna dedicate ourselves to that, and we're gonna make your experience great.
I'm glad you mentioned production. We have, I think, some stills, photographs. One of the things that's fascinating is how in that tiny space you manage to create visual and oral environments.
Yeah, I want to talk about that space. It used to be a residence hall lounge, right?
Yeah, it was a cafeteria.
And how many seats are in there?
How many seats?
95.
Okay.
Wow.
But among the things you do are set designs and costume designs that go a whole nother level than what you expect.
That's what
So
everybody's
amazing.
talking
can we
about.
show the photograph of the Revolutionists?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
revolution.
that's
Talk a little bit about that.
That's
That
Dawn C. Schamberger's costume design for which she won the Carbonell this year, which so that play, this was one of the things that drew us to the play. I mean, it's a very modern sort of speech, but these characters are in the 1700s, right? And so when Dawn and I try to find at least one show every year that is a designer's playground. They're artists, like that's what they do. Like I want to give them the freedom to create this stuff. So all of those were designed and built from scratch. And everybody talks about Marie Antoinette's costume. I got to point out my friend there, Nicole Stoica, who played, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the name of the character, but she was modeled after like an Assassin's Creed type character. And so even though it looks like she's in a dress, she's actually secretly in pants, which was like my favorite little surprise of the whole show that Dawn had done.
How much in advance do you talk with your designers? How much of that is that 2 or 3 weeks in advance? Or are you talking
About a year. About a year.
I would
About
think,
a year.
yeah.
When we pick the shows, one of the things that we consider is this show for us in terms of like, is it our aesthetic? And then we also try to determine, is this show for our space? You know, is this a show that we can present with what we have? You know, our space is small, it has its limitations, but those limitations engage imagination because you don't have the liberty of having a fly system or having a trap door, right? We don't have those tricks. So if we choose something and it's got elements like that, we have to figure out the clever way around it. Like, I think when we did Tar Beach, that was one of my favorite examples. Doing Tar Beach, which Tammy Ryan's play, and again, to go back to what you're talking about 2 and 3 productions, that was the second production of her play. And she really felt like we gave her play, like she knew what play she had there. There's a sequence when the daughter jumps on the father's back and they're supposed to fly. Now, if I were in a big house and I had a fly system, I would absolutely fly them out over the audience and it would be this like, wow, magical moment, right? But we don't have that. So what did we do? We talked for a year, what can we do? We knew we had to create an effect that totally blew out the reality. So Michael McLean, who's a brilliant designer, he drilled holes in the floor, and Jason Tomaszewski, our lighting designer for that show, we put little LED lights all through the floor and the whole set. And so the whole set became stars in that moment, and we just broke the reality, and we turned it into a 70s line dance, and it worked, you know. And, but we have to talk about that stuff when we choose a show. So like when we were picking Harlow, I had to go to Michael and say, listen, this has got water, this has got this. Can we pull this off? And you know, Michael's a crazy genius, so he was like, sure, we'll try it.
I'm curious, you were talking about possibly opening a theater in Philadelphia. Were you doing the acting? Were you acting and learning as you were going with the ultimate aim for Matt Stabile to have his own theater?
Yeah.
And then when you did have your own theater and you and Nikki became the Blunts, nobody's going to be old enough to get that. I was curious, when you direct your wife or when you're working with your wife, I'm just, you know, it's the most idiotic question people ask. It's like, how do you learn the lines? How does that work together? Does the dynamic change for you, or is it all pretty easygoing. I'm thinking of notes.
I think, you know, it would depend on who you ask. I think she and I are
If I ask
totally
Nikki?
comfortable. Yeah, no, actually, I think she'd be like, no, we're fine. We've been doing it for we've been
How long
working
have you been together?
We just had our 14th anniversary. So,
Mazel tov.
yeah, thank you.
14 years of notes.
14 years ago.
You'll get it right sooner. We have to keep going.
Yeah, I think our first show together was like in 2006, and then I think the first time I directed her was 2007, and so we had been through multiple companies together, so we just have kind of a shorthand, and I trust her implicitly, and she trusts me implicitly, I hope, and so like in the Tar Beach monologue, for instance, like that was one of those moments where I was like, I don't need to work this. Like you'll be there. I don't need to talk to you about this. Like we can have a conversation about it, but I'm not going to work this. Now, for other people outside of it, we have a shorthand that maybe they're like, are they fighting right now? But no, I mean, it's just like for me, you know, I get the good fortune of being married to one of the best actresses in the region. And so like I have the in when I need to cast something. Like, hey, don't take that other job. I need you.
And what happens when the urge bites you to go back to acting?
I was going to ask.
You know, it's funny about that. I don't, that was never what drew me to this. I was a playwright, a set designer, and a director in college. I did acting, obviously, that's how most of us get into it, but I was more interested in the other stuff, and I think that's because, and I don't mean this to sound cheeky, like I just find that stuff a little more challenging to me. I feel like a lot of time I can pick up something acting-wise and just kind of be there, and just, okay, I get this, whereas like I think the other things create puzzles and questions for me that I'm more interested in, and so now there's not anything like pushing me back to acting or drawing me back in. That might change. There are certain scripts that I pick up and read, and I'm like, oh, this one makes me want to get back on the stage. But I get to be more, I guess, selective about that now. So
But it's nice
fun.
to become a cliche also, because after 100 years of acting, I've started directing.
Right.
And I think it makes us a more empathetic director.
Yeah.
But enough about me.
No, I think that's true. I think like I always approach the work from like, oh, what did it feel like when I was
That's
in
it.
that place?
That's
and,
it.
Well, you're doing it all. So you're producing,
Yeah.
you're directing, and you're always acting. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I just. Yeah, have there been, without naming any plays, have there been many plays that you wish you hadn't done?
That I hadn't done?
Stinkers, Matt. Any stinkers?
No, honestly, no. I will say, you know, I think this is going to sound like a canned answer maybe, but like, because Nikki and I were both kind of out of the business for a long time because we were teaching, and we had kind of stable lives and all that, and we were still in the business, right? We were running our own company and doing stuff like that. When we left teaching to become full-time artists again, we approached that with total gratitude and just like, we're so lucky to get to do what we do. We are so, I mean, I feel all the time how incredibly fortunate I've been in these last 6 years to be where I'm at. And so, have there been plays that I haven't been like thrilled to go to every night? Sure, and the drive down through the Miami traffic, I've been like, wait, what am I doing this for? But then as soon as I'm there, I'm like, you idiot, you get to play make-believe for money? Like, calm down, like there are worse things in life.
But when you do a show at Theatre Lab, do you see shows that you go, wow, we knocked this one out of the park, this one needed more work?
Oh my gosh, man, I can't, like all the thing that you always are that way, I think. You know, I think your artists are always fighting the disease of perfectionism.
The worst critic.
Yeah, and so
Your own
you're
worst
in there, and if 89 people in the audience are just loving everything,
there you go.
I'm watching the one person
Exactly.
who like is picking up their program and reading it in the middle of the first act, you know? And it's like, and so of course that happens, but I think at some point you have to be comfortable with like, this is the production that we were able to do at this time, and as long as we feel honestly like we gave it our best, then I'm happy with it.
Before we forget, I'm sorry, because I'm going to forget. Tell people the name of the website where they can get more information.
FAU.edu/Theatre Lab. I mean, or actually, if you're on Facebook, that's actually the best way. Just Facebook has got everything you could ever want to know about Theatre
Too
Lab.
much.
Yeah.
Do you think now, you know, Lou had started pretty much Theatre Lab. Do you think it's changed under your artistic director? What kind of changes have you, or what's the a twofold question is,
Sure.
where is it now? Where do you want to see it go?
Yeah.
And is it different under your direction in some ways?
I
What do you
mean,
bring to it?
I think it's. I guess it's different. It doesn't feel that way. Lou, I mean, Lou is one of, if not the most amazing person I've interacted with artistically down here. He is this giving soul, and he's been so important to South Florida theater. I mean, and so we have now been working together for over 6 years, from Arts Garage to Theatre Lab, and so from the beginning he was very like side by side with me, and so I can't say that it feels all that different, because from the beginning we were just always together. And he's still, it's not like Lou's gone anywhere. He's still around, and he's still, and I get to look to him. I feel really lucky about that, because when I have questions, and I know other artistic directors, and I've spoken with them about and how lucky I am to have somebody to say, hey, you've probably experienced this already.
He's your mentor.
Yeah, exactly, totally. And it's been a gift.
Is there, before we go, because we're running out of time, you have learned a great deal in putting your company together, and there are people watching that would be fascinated. Are there a couple of lessons that, if you were giving advice to someone, here's what we've learned you ought to know?
Yeah, I approach everything as if you are lucky to be doing it, and you are lucky that other people have agreed to do it with you. And start all of your budgets with compensating actors and artists and directors and designers first, and go from there. And then expect that there's going to be hiccups. I mean, like every day there's some, and I think that's the thing that I'm still sort of learning. I went to a FIPTA meeting like not long ago, and I sat there with like Andrew Cato and Riverside and all these big houses around the state. And they're all experiencing the exact same problems at a different level than that we're experiencing, So it's like, you can't get wrapped up in the, oh man, this is a problem.
You can tell he was a teacher.
That was great.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Well
Okay,
done.
so unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, because we could go at least another half hour. I want to thank our panelists for being here today, and I especially want to thank Matt Stabile for sharing the Theatre Lab with us. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Spotlight on the Arts is a community program, so if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear them. You can email us with them at spotlightonthearts@browardschools.com. And please check our favorite websites to see what's going on all over South Florida. Those websites are floridatheateronstage.com and miamiartzine.com. Thank you for watching. Make sure you tune in next week. And as always, as Iris Acker always closed the show saying, make sure you go to the theater. Thank you and good night.